West Lothian is shaped by royal towns, quiet streets, and historic ground. Beneath this landscape, older stories linger. Here are 8 haunted places where history feels close. House of the Bins. Standing quietly near Linlithgow, the House of the Bins overlooks open countryside that appears peaceful and unchanged. Yet behind its stone walls lies a reputation shaped by one of Scotland's most controversial historical figures, a man whose legacy has proven difficult to leave behind. The spirit most closely associated with the house is that of General Sir Thomas Dalziel, often remembered by the nickname Bluidy Tam. A fierce royalist commander, during the 17th century Dalziel lived a life marked by violence, exile, and unwavering loyalty to the crown. Captured at the Battle of Worcester, he was imprisoned in the Tower of London before escaping and fleeing abroad. During his years in exile, he is said to have served with the Tsar's Cossacks, where his reputation for cruelty became firmly established. According to local tradition, Dalziel's spirit still walks the house and its surrounding grounds. Witnesses have described a tall male figure dressed in period military clothing, moving slowly through rooms and corridors, his presence stern and commanding. Others claim to have seen him riding a white horse across the estate, an image that has become central to the legend. More unsettling are the stories that link Dalziel to darker associations. Folklore claims that he once played cards with the devil himself, and on at least one occasion won. Whether intended as metaphor or moral warning, the tale has endured, reinforcing the idea that Dalziel was a man who feared little even beyond death. Visitors to the House of the Bins have reported subtle disturbances rather than dramatic encounters. Footsteps heard when rooms are empty, a sudden heaviness in the air, the sense of being observed, particularly in quieter areas of the house. These moments are brief, yet difficult to dismiss entirely. Skeptics point to Dalziel's notorious reputation as fertile ground for legend. Historic houses often amplify sound, and expectation can shape perception, particularly when a figure is so vividly remembered. These explanations are reasonable and widely accepted, yet even those unfamiliar with Bluidy Tam's story often remark on the atmosphere at the House of the Bins. The building feels authoritative rather than welcoming, as though shaped by the will of someone accustomed to command. Today, the house is carefully preserved, its history presented openly to visitors. But when the grounds grow quiet and the light begins to fade, some believe a former general still walks here, unwilling to relinquish the land he once ruled. And as we leave the House of the Bins behind, our journey through West Lothian continues toward a royal palace where apparitions are said to walk not in anger, but in sorrow and devotion. Linlithgow Palace. Rising above a quiet loch at the heart of Linlithgow, the ruins of Linlithgow Palace stand as one of Scotland's most significant royal residences. Once a place of ceremony, birth, and devotion, it is best remembered as the birthplace of Mary, Queen of Scots. Though roofless and open to the sky, the palace remains heavy with memory, and many believe it has never entirely fallen silent. The most frequently reported apparition here is known as the Blue Lady. She is said to walk a familiar route, moving from the palace entrance toward the nearby church of St. Michael. Witnesses describe her as dressed in a flowing blue gown, her movements slow and deliberate. She is most often reported during spring mornings, particularly in April, when the light is soft and the grounds unusually still. Some claim to have heard the faint rustle of her dress as she passes. Another presence is linked to Queen Margaret's Bower, a quiet corner of the palace grounds associated with reflection and prayer. Here, a figure sometimes described as a white lady has been reported. Unlike the Blue Lady, her presence is marked less by sight than by sensation. Visitors speak of a sudden drop in temperature and the unexpected scent of perfume, lingering briefly in the air before fading. The palace is also associated with Mary, Queen of Scots herself. According to tradition, her spirit has been seen kneeling in prayer within the chapel. Those who report this sighting describe a solemn and composed figure absorbed in devotion, unaware of the present. The atmosphere during these moments is often described as reverent rather than frightening. Skeptics point out that Linlithgow Palace is exposed to shifting light, wind, and sound, all of which can create illusions of movement and scent. Ruined stone structures are particularly susceptible to echo and temperature change. These explanations are sensible and widely accepted, yet even visitors unaware of the legends often remark on the palace's distinctive mood. The ruins feel attentive, as though listening rather than abandoned. Silence here seems deliberate, shaped by centuries of ceremony and loss. Today, Linlithgow Palace stands preserved as a historic monument, its stories documented and its walls open to exploration. But when the morning mist drifts across the loch and footsteps echo softly through empty chambers, some believe the palace remembers its former inhabitants. And as we leave this place of royal memory behind, our journey continues toward a fortress, once feared as a prison, where the presence is said to be far less gentle. Blackness Castle, standing on a rocky promontory overlooking the Firth of Forth, Blackness Castle cuts a striking silhouette against the water. Often described as the ship that never sailed, its angular shape and sheer stone walls give it an unmistakably forbidding presence. Built in the 15th century, the castle served as both fortress and prison, a dual role that has left a lasting imprint on its reputation. Visitors and staff have long reported unsettling experiences within the castle's walls. One of the most persistent accounts involves the apparition of an armored knight said to guard the prison tower. Witnesses describe a tall figure, clad in heavy armor, standing motionless before suddenly advancing without warning. In some stories, the figure is said to pursue those who linger too long, vanishing only when the individual flees into the open air. Alongside sightings, strange sounds are frequently mentioned. The scraping noise of something being dragged across stone floors has been heard echoing through empty chambers. Heavy bangs, described as blows struck against solid rock, have also been reported reverberating through the castle's interior despite no visible source. The atmosphere within Blackness Castle is often described as oppressive. Even during daylight hours, certain areas feel unnaturally cold. Footsteps echo in corridors that should be empty, and voices sometimes seem to carry from behind walls, stopping abruptly when followed. Skeptics point to the castle's exposed position and harsh environment. Wind rushes through narrow openings. Waves strike the rocks below, sending vibrations through the stone. Old structures respond dramatically to weather and temperature changes. These explanations are logical and often sufficient. Yet what distinguishes Blackness Castle is the consistency of reports across generations. People unfamiliar with its legends often describe similar sensations: a feeling of being watched, an urge to leave certain rooms quickly, the sense that the building is not merely abandoned, but alert. Unlike more romantic ruins, Blackness was designed to intimidate. Its walls contained fear, punishment, and isolation. For some, this purpose lingers, shaping every experience within its confines. Today, Blackness Castle stands preserved as a historic site, its past interpreted through education rather than myth. Visitors explore, freely drawn by its dramatic setting and history. But when the wind rises and the corridors fall quiet, some believe the castle still guards its prisoners, and that the knight remains at his post, watching the shore for threats that never truly disappeared. And as we leave Blackness behind, our journey through West Lothian continues toward a church where a spectral figure is said to fade into stone itself, walking a path between palace and faith. St. Michael's Parish Church, Linlithgow. Standing beside Linlithgow Palace, St. Michael's Parish Church has long been woven into the spiritual and political life of the town. Its stone walls have witnessed royal ceremonies, public worship, and centuries of quiet devotion. Yet beyond its role as a place of faith, the church is linked to a figure whose presence appears to bridge palace and sanctuary. According to local tradition, a spectral lady dressed in blue has been seen walking from the nearby palace toward the church. Her route is described with striking consistency. She approaches along the same path, moving calmly and without haste, before reaching the church wall, where she fades from sight as though absorbed into the stone itself. Witnesses describe her as silent and composed. There is no expression of distress, no attempt to draw attention. Instead, her presence feels purposeful, as though she is completing a journey rather than wandering. Some who have seen her report hearing the faint rustle of fabric as she moves, despite no sound of footsteps on the ground. The timing of these sightings is often noted. The Blue Lady is most frequently reported during the early hours of the morning, when the town is quiet and the air still. During these moments, the boundary between palace and church feels unusually close, reinforcing the sense that history continues to move through familiar routes. Unlike many haunted churches, St. Michael's is not associated with violent disturbance. There are no reports of objects moving or voices calling out. Instead, the unease comes from subtle change. A sudden chill near the church wall, a feeling of being watched while standing alone in the kirkyard, the impression that something has just passed by. Skeptics suggest that early morning light, shadow, and mist can easily distort perception. Old stone walls reflect sound unpredictably, and expectation can shape interpretation, particularly in places rich with royal history. These explanations are sensible and widely accepted, yet even visitors unaware of the legend often remark on the church's atmosphere. The space feels attentive rather than empty. Silence here carries weight, as though shaped by centuries of prayer and passage. St. Michael's Parish Church remains active, its doors open, its purpose unchanged. Services continue, and the building stands as a symbol of continuity. But when the palace grounds fall quiet and dawn approaches, some believe a blue figure still walks this familiar path, moving steadily between power and faith. And as we leave the church behind, our journey through West Lothian continues toward a grand house where the details are fewer, but the sense of presence remains quietly unresolved. Macdonald House. Set just outside Uphall, Macdonald House stands as a grand country estate shaped by centuries of change. Its oldest sections date back to the 17th century, while later additions reflect shifts in ownership and fashion. Today, the house appears calm and refined, yet within its earlier walls, a small number of unexplained reports continue to surface. Unlike many haunted locations, the stories associated with House are focused almost entirely on a single room in the original pre-1960s portion of the building. There are no widely shared accounts of figures or dramatic disturbance. Instead, what unsettles visitors is a distinct and immediate change in atmosphere. Those who have entered the room describe the air as suddenly heavy, as though pressure has settled without warning. Some report an instinctive reluctance to remain inside, despite nothing appearing visibly wrong. The sensation is said to lift the moment the room is exited, reinforcing the impression that the experience is tightly confined to that specific space. A faint sense of presence is also mentioned. Not fear, but awareness. The feeling of being observed rather than threatened. Sound within the room seems muted, while activity elsewhere in the house continues unaffected, creating an odd contrast that leaves visitors unsettled. Skeptical explanations are readily offered. Older buildings often experience uneven air circulation and temperature shifts. Less frequently used rooms can feel unfamiliar, encouraging discomfort shaped by expectation. These explanations are sensible and difficult to dismiss. What gives the reports at Westport House their quiet persistence is consistency. Although details remain sparse, accounts across several years describe the same sensations, the same reluctance, the same feeling of attention, rather than emptiness. Even individuals unfamiliar with the house's reputation have remarked on the room's atmosphere without prompting. Westport House does not promote these stories. Its history is presented through architecture and records, not folklore. There are no signs or guided narratives suggesting anything unusual. Yet for those who experience the room firsthand, the memory lingers, not as fear, but as an unanswered question. Why this room, and why only here? Macdonald Westport House remains a place of elegance and continuity, its role unchanged. But within its older walls, some believe a quiet trace of the past still remains, leaving behind an impression rather than a mark. Bangour Village Hospital. Set among woodland outside Broxburn, Bangour Village Hospital once formed a self-contained community of red stone buildings connected by long paths and open lawns. Opened in the early 20th century, it served as a psychiatric hospital for decades, treating thousands of patients, including soldiers affected by the trauma of the First World War. By the 1990s, the hospital had closed, and much of the site was left abandoned. It is this period of silence that has shaped Bangour's reputation. Former staff visitors and passers-by have spoken of unexplained sounds emerging from empty wards. Footsteps are said to echo along corridors where floors are cracked and ceilings fallen. These sounds are often described as measured, rather than rushed, as though someone is walking with purpose, despite the absence of anyone there. Whispering is another commonly reported feature. Voices are said to carry faintly through open doorways, never forming clear words. Those who hear them often describe an immediate awareness of unease, prompting them to leave the area without fully understanding why. Shadows have also been reported, moving across door frames and stairwells vanishing when followed. The discovery of unmarked graves near the hospital grounds has deepened the site's somber reputation. Many of these burial sites are believed to belong to former patients who died while under care, their identities lost to time. For some, this knowledge has added weight to the experiences reported, reinforcing the sense that Bangour retains memory rather than emptiness. Skeptics offer practical explanations. Abandoned buildings amplify sound. Wind moves freely through broken windows and corridors. Wildlife occupies spaces once filled by people. Expectation, particularly in places associated with mental illness and isolation, can heighten perception. These explanations are reasonable and often sufficient. Yet even those unaware of Bangour's history frequently remark on the atmosphere. The site feels watchful rather than abandoned. Silence seems to press inward, making even small sounds feel intrusive. Time appears to stretch, encouraging visitors to move on more quickly than intended. Bangour Village Hospital now stands largely reclaimed by nature. Trees grow through roofs. Paths fade into grass. Its future remains uncertain. But for some, the sense persists that the hospital never fully emptied, that the routines, emotions, and lives once contained within its walls left traces behind. And as we leave Bangour, our journey continues toward a civic building where justice once ruled, and where memory may still linger in quieter, less visible ways. Court residence Linlithgow. Standing on Court Square in the heart of Linlithgow, the court residence is a modest but historically significant building. For centuries, it served as a place of law judgment and civic authority. Lives were weighed here. Decisions were passed that shaped futures. Though its role has long since changed, some believe the weight of that responsibility has never entirely lifted. Unlike other haunted sites with clearly defined legends, the stories linked to the court residence are indistinct and rarely spoken of in detail. It is simply described again and again as haunted. This lack of clarity has only deepened the unease surrounding the building, suggesting something felt rather than seen. Visitors and those who have worked near the building describe a persistent sense of presence, particularly during quieter hours. The atmosphere is said to change subtly, as though the space becomes attentive. Sound behaves oddly. Footsteps echo more sharply than expected, even when the square outside is empty. Some have reported a sudden chill near the entrance, despite mild weather. Others speak of the sensation of being watched while standing alone nearby, a feeling that fades only when they move away. These experiences are brief, offering no spectacle, yet they leave a lasting impression. There are no consistent accounts of apparitions, no figures pacing corridors or standing in windows. Instead, the haunting of the court residence is defined by restraint, by absence rather than action. The building feels occupied, yet refuses to reveal by whom. Skeptics point to the psychology of place. Buildings associated with authority and punishment often carry an emotional charge long after their function has ended. Old stone structures retain cold, amplify sound, and encourage imagination, particularly in historic town centers. These explanations are sensible and widely accepted, yet even those unfamiliar with the building's past have commented on its atmosphere. The court residence feels serious, almost severe. It does not invite lingering. People tend to pass quickly, glancing back without knowing why. Today, the building stands preserved as part of Linlithgow's heritage. It is no longer a place of judgment, but of history. Life continues around it. Cafes open nearby, and visitors move through the square, unaware. But when the streets grow quiet and the town settles into evening, some believe the court residence still remembers its former role. That echoes of decision, consequence, and silence remain held within its walls. And as we leave this place of law behind, our journey through West Lothian moves toward its final stop. A building on the high street where the details are scarce, but the reputation quietly endures. Westport House, Linlithgow. Standing along Linlithgow's High Street, Westport House blends easily into its surroundings. Its frontage gives little indication that it differs from the neighboring buildings, and by day it attracts little attention. Yet despite the absence of dramatic legend or detailed accounts, the house has long carried a quiet reputation for being haunted. Unlike other locations in West Lothian, stories linked to Westport House are notably sparse. There are no widely reported apparitions, no named spirits, and no clear historical event tied directly to the experiences described. What persists instead is a general sense of unease passed quietly between those familiar with the building. People who have spent time inside describe an atmosphere that feels unsettled rather than threatening. Certain rooms are said to feel unexpectedly cold, even when the rest of the building is comfortable. Others speak of an instinctive reluctance to remain in specific areas, a feeling that fades once they move on. Occasionally, faint sounds have been reported, footsteps where no one is present, a soft knock or creak that cannot be traced to movement outside. These moments are brief and easily dismissed, yet they tend to recur, creating an impression of repetition rather than coincidence. What makes Westport House unusual is the consistency of these subtle experiences, despite the lack of a clear narrative. Different individuals, often unaware of the building's reputation, have described similar sensations: a sense of being watched, the feeling that a space is occupied even when empty. Skeptics point out that older buildings along busy streets are subject to constant vibration, temperature change, and structural movement. Sound travels easily through shared walls. Expectation can shape interpretation, particularly when a place is already whispered about. These explanations are reasonable and difficult to disprove. Yet for those who experience Westport House firsthand, the impression lingers, not as fear, but as awareness, the sense that something remains unspoken, unresolved, or simply unnoticed. Today, Westport House continues to stand as part of Linlithgow's everyday life. People pass by without pause, unaware of its reputation. There are no signs, no stories displayed, no encouragement to look closer. But as with many such places, it is the absence of explanation that proves most unsettling. Without a name, a face, or a clear story, the house resists understanding. And with that final quiet uncertainty, our journey through West Lothian comes to an end. From castles and palaces to hospitals and high street buildings, these places remind us that haunting does not always announce itself. Sometimes it simply waits, woven into the fabric of the everyday unnoticed, until someone pauses long enough to feel it. These places show us that haunting is not always about fear, but about memory left behind. Buildings absorb lives' routines and moments long forgotten. If these stories made you pause, share your thoughts and join Creepy Experience as we continue listening to Britain's quiet past.